Yonkers and Albany. So school funding, number one. Yonkers Municipal Housing Authority getting millions of additional dollars to restore buildings that were badly out of date. Working on the Rebuild Yonkers Schools initiative to actually rebuild and put money into the real old infrastructure of the Yonkers schools. And really being a voice for every community in Yonkers and making sure that the diversity of Yonkers was well spoken of in Albany. I've been a leader on the fight for affordable childcare and after school. That is the secret for people to work who have kids. And so I have always been interested in families, children, and seniors, and I've done my best. Then George Latimer won. That was great in my opinion. I'm a progressive Democrat. I've been all my life, and I jumped into the race because I thought I lived in White Plains for 18 years before I moved back to Yonkers. I was the right person who could sort of be a little bit like George in bringing all kinds of groups together and saying we need to talk to each other, not scream at each other, listen to each other, work together. People are tired of the animosity, the tone of the Donald Trump age. They really resent it. I resent it. And they want people who are willing to roll up their sleeves and get work done, regardless of party, serve the people. And I thought I was the best candidate. I got chosen by the Democratic Party after there was a big field of 5 people. We all worked together and we came out unified. And so now we're starting, and there's a special election on Tuesday, April 24th.
Oh, so they finally picked a date.
Yes, the governor finally picked a date.
When did he do that?
He actually, Tuesday, he is issuing the paper that declares it tomorrow, so you're not wrong. But he let it on that he was going to do it, and it's Tuesday, April 24th.
Okay.
Great.
Absolutely.
Remember, now, folks, go out and vote that day.
Now, I was just reading February 1st, which was a couple of days ago. You just got an endorsement from a group that I forgot something about children.
Yes. So that is a group that has been fighting. You'd think it was a no-brainer to change the law so that when children were sexually abused and then later as adults, as we've seen recently, either recall or have the details of what happened and are willing to come forward, that we have a system that allows them to and doesn't block them by the statute of limitations. In the Assembly, we passed like a reasonable bill. It has a short ability to look back, like you can't go 20 years from now, but there'd be a civil action and a criminal action could be come back after a certain number of years after you turn 21. It used to be absolutely was fixed at 21 or 22, I believe. So we came up with a reasonable proposal, and the Senate Republicans blocked this bill because, frankly, some of the religious institutions, both Catholic and Jewish, are worried that people are going to come back and try to sue them, and so they've been against it. This is a very reasonable kind of compromise like they have in other states. It would give children who are now adults the ability to just come back, make their claim if it's a good claim, otherwise they lose, and in limited circumstances, criminal ability to bring criminal charges if there's proof. So I was very happy to get their endorsement. They are.
And what was the name of the organization?
It's Alliance for Children's Rights, I believe.
Something like that, right?
Yeah, they have been really leading the charge with a guy who this happened to, and he was barred because he didn't get in there fast enough, and that seems very unjust. And particularly when you see what's happened with this Olympic committee, with these young girls who come forward too much. It's unbelievable.
168 girls.
Yes, it's unbelievable.
And there's more.
There's more.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of thing I got endorsed. I'm going to get endorsed, I believe, by the the Hispanic Law Enforcement Association. They're doing an event for me, which I appreciate. I have a broad endorsements from labor unions, including sort of more conservative unions, and the more forward-thinking, the Transit Workers Union, Local 100, the drivers of the Liberty Lines, and the school buses. They were my #1 endorsement.
Wow,
Okay.
nice.
I'm glad we were able to get you to come on now, and we try to bring all the candidates on so that people get a look at them, can get a sense of who they are. We had originally tried to reach out to you before they made the decision,
right?
And then they made the decision, so it's good that you came now.
Well, thank you. But let me just say something about that decision. So, there were multiple candidates competing for Democratic district leaders, but
Right.
there's like 650 people who actually vote in that little mini convention that we had at Crockett County Center. And you had to be the one who was appealing to people that didn't always know me in Rye and Portchester and Mamaroneck and Bedford, this Armonk. You had to go make your case, and I did the best I could. And I had allies, you know, people who knew what I did in Yonkers, people who have been supportive of me. Yesterday I had, in my office, which is in my campaign office in Mamaroneck, I had so many people from the west side of Yonkers who came to help me. West side of Yonkers is not in this district. That's Andrea Stewart Cousins' district.
Wow.
But, you know, it was a sign of loyalty that I have done my best. Not perfect, but I've done my best for the people I've represented. And, you know, I'm born and bred in Yonkers, a Yonkers person to my core.
That's beautiful.
But this district is
That's what I'm
Yonkers
talking
plus.
about. Yes.
And we had the only candidate that did come on was Kat, and I was impressed with her, the fact that especially with a lot of these elections that I've seen, no matter what happens at the primary, everybody still runs to the general election. She said if she didn't win the nomination, she would get behind the candidate who did win.
And
You know what I'm saying? And that's a refreshing thing
Absolutely.
with the way things have been going.
And you know what she did yesterday? She spent the whole afternoon with me, going to places, campaigning with me,
Yep, she-
helping me.
And that's why I mentioned it, because
she's
it's authentic.
awesome.
'Cause, you know, she did.
Good
She's
for her.
awesome.
Yeah.
Good for her.
You know,
That's good.
some people talk the talk, but you know, I
She walked it.
So you're facing a Republican challenger?
Yes, and they haven't named the candidate.
because they got two. They got at least two, right?
They got a loser and a
And they have another
semi-loser.
one, and another one has come forward.
Another, so it's three.
Now there's a
running for that.
third, and they're going to decide on Wednesday because they only have a limited number of days after the governor calls it to file the paperwork to
Right.
start the
Yeah,
election.
'cause they haven't
Okay.
even mentioned.
yeah,
announcement or
79
anything.
days, I think, 78, 79 days
Right.
from when he caused it to the election.
Okay, so if they don't call it, then what?
Well, he's going to call tomorrow, and the
Okay.
Republicans are going to name their candidate on Wednesday. And, you know, I hate to say, I think there's going to be some ugliness. They've already started.
Really?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah,
Jeez.
and I think people are turned off by that. They want to know what you're going to do, what you like, what your story is. I'm proud of my past, and I've been a fighter on behalf of people's interests my whole life. I spent 12 years in the Attorney General's office. I was in the Civil Rights Bureau of the Bob Abrams' office. I was very instrumental in trying to resolve a fight with the community at St. Luke's Hospital, with the Harlem community, which we did ultimately resolve. So I've been in these kinds of, you know, battles, which I believe on the right side for a long time, and I'm proud of that. But I have a sinking feeling that there's going to be some ugliness to come, and I think that's unfortunate. I hope they don't do that.
I mean, and it's just the climate of the politics lately, nationally.
Well, they're a little
and
desperate
locally.
right
I mean,
now.
and there is a little desperation, and
Yeah,
then
exactly.
from the leadership of the country all the way down. I mean,
Yes.
it's just, you know, it's ridiculous, the state of politics
And
right now.
and I would say that, you know, all these folks who are motivated by Trump and deciding they got to get involved in local politics, it's unbelievable the energy and enthusiasm they have. They want to influence local elections. They may not have even voted in local elections before.
Right.
Now they're like, how did we let this happen? We are so profoundly upset with the tone.
Right.
Even people who vote for him, with the
Right.
tone of his
Right.
policies.
Right.
We can't accept him, and they're coming out of the woodwork. Honestly, people are so excited.
Oh, I
and
can
motivated.
imagine.
Well, maybe I think this is also the wake-up call for people to really get involved in the political process.
Yes.
You know, because you know what we see in Washington is crazy. I've never seen, and for us, we're not the world leaders anymore.
No,
Right, we are not the world leaders anymore.
You know, it's twice this week I've been around. I believe there were Republicans who voted for Trump, and they're embarrassed by his conduct as the president.
Right,
You know, and the non-leadership.
right,
And the fact that, you know, I always think of my father, who was very much a liberal Democrat, but he, you know, people who were veterans who went all over the world to fight for American democracy, this idea that this is what the America looks like, it's, you know, one thing I would say is the African American community has been involved in local politics when a lot of other people walked away and stopped being so interested. And now, you know, there's a little bit of they've woken up, as you said, that they
Yeah.
got to get back into the mix here.
Right. We got a comment from the audience. I mean, from the listeners. Said, ask her if she personally knew Nick Wasicko.
Was Cisco.
Was okay. I said
Wasicko.
pronounce it right. I don't know who that is, so I'm not sure.
He's no longer with us.
Oh, okay.
He was a mayor of Yonkers.
Okay.
And that was during the time I was no longer living here and came back to live here. No, I did not know him personally.
Okay.
I knew his wife.
Who asked that question?
Yeah, she's
Charles
still-
Stern.
Yeah,
Oh,
she's
okay.
still working.
Yeah, his widow, who is now remarried, is a wonderful person. Still works in Yonkers City Hall.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, how was the transition from Assembly to Senate? I always wondered that because I see a lot of people jump.
Yeah, they jump.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
jump over. Is it a difficult transition, or is just
Well,
it's like it's the same like meetings and same
it's similar,
procedures?
but here's the difference. Two things. One is in the Assembly, I represent 137,000 people.
okay.
If I win the Senate seat, it's 330,000.
Okay. Okay.
In the Assembly, I only have Yonkers, and I
Okay.
sort of give my all to Yonkers. If I win the Senate seat, it's Eastchester and Tuckahoe and
Right.
Portchester and all the way
Right.
up to Bedford and Armonk, affluent communities, so you got a different range of issues.
Right. Right.
Only half of Yonkers, which is unfortunate, like the east side,
Mhm.
in my opinion. Too bad they cut it in half. But I served for 4 years as the chief counsel to the Senate Democrats.
Okay.
So I know the Senate and how it works.
Mhm.
I was there in some rocky times, but I know how to navigate it, I
Okay.
think. And I
Okay.
think I'll be a voice for reason.
Yes. Yes.
And to hope the Democrats get to a majority and Senator Stuart Cousins becomes a leader.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm on
we're-
that side of the group.
Yeah, we all.
We're glad to hear
good.
that.
Yeah, we
Yes.
all hoping that some change will come,
Yes, me too.
and with this whole IDC thing.
Yes, and we've been partners and friends for a long time. We run together and we've worked together very closely. So I am already pledged. I'm in the Andre Stewart Cousins camp.
So Shelley,
Okay.
just so you know, our other co-host, Dr. Robert Baskerville,
Hi, how you doing?
just walked in.
Pleasure to meet
Wasn't
you.
sure if he was coming today, but he's here.
Yes, we
Can
did.
I
remember.
ask the Assemblywoman
Absolutely,
a question?
absolutely.
You mentioned education. Are you in favor of charter schools?
Well, here's what I've done about charter schools. Not a simple answer.
Mhm.
Charter schools in New York City, charter schools outside of New York City, different animals, really. In New York City, the charter school world has sort of taken over some of the New York City public school buildings and the money of the New York City public schools. So it's a much more intense conversation. In Yonkers, I have been supportive of the charter school here.
Yeah, they're good people.
Yeah, I've
They're
been
good people.
quite supportive of them, and I think they do an excellent job. I do think people have to understand that the way the financing of charters goes is that for every student in the charter, the Yonkers Public School has to pay that out, and it's set at a very high amount by the state. So if you lose 20 kids, or 20 kids go to the charter instead of Lincoln High School, or not the high school, elementary school, that school still has to pay heat and the teachers and all that. They can't just get rid of a teacher because 20 kids went over there and come back. The other thing is, there's always a question, do they sort of cherry pick the parents and the students who are the best behaved and the most high achieving? And so I think there should be more transparency. But I have been supportive of the charter school in Yonkers, but I have concerns about charter schools sort of taking over the money of our public schools, which we need to invest in.
Because I know there's going to be a meeting
Yes.
about another charter
A
school.
new charter, a new
Is
proposal.
it the same folks?
No.
Oh, Jesus.
It is a new proposal. It was today, I believe. I asked the staff person to go from my office. They are proposing a new school, and I met with them. I was, I'll meet with anybody, but I explained to them, do you understand? And I don't think they really did understand that if they get approved, that is, I think it is $3 million less for the Yonkers Public Schools. And I personally, fight for every $1 million. So
Right.
I got to educate that charters cost money.
We're actually going to do a show eventually on the pros and cons of charter schools. And the gentleman who asked your question is from Mount Vernon, and he's from Amani, the charter school in
Yes.
Mount. Yeah, he's from that school. So,
It's a fair question. I mean, it's a big
Can
deal
I ask
issue.
my second question?
yeah, one question. Oh, just a comment real quick. We're going to get to you. Ken Bright from Mount Vernon said, Shelley Meyers, thanks for advocating for children and your support towards CAIC/Hope Bill/criminal justice reform. I'm not aware of
Yeah,
all that
no.
is.
I mean, a lot of these issues, that's, just the general efforts towards criminal justice reform, which in the Assembly we passed. We can't get anywhere in the Senate. But, we all know that the system, it does not work well enough, and it certainly doesn't work well enough towards people of color, and we have to do better. And I've been involved with, both as a lawyer and as an advocate, trying to move to the right side. At the same time, I believe we have to have conversations with law enforcement. We're better not being enemies. We're better educating them about the things that they sometimes don't see. And I've been proud that I've continued to do that with my contacts in the law enforcement community.
And Lorraine has a question.
Thank you. Tasha was here,
Yes.
and she's from the Lower Hudson Progressive Action Network.
Love
yeah.
Pen, yeah.
Love
And she was also here representing the Black Women's Political Caucus, and they discussed Senator Klein
Yes.
and allegations of sexual misconduct. What are your feelings on that?
Well, one is I don't know what happened. We know the allegation and that, but what I don't like is the policy the Senate adopted this week without having Senator Andrea Stewart Cousins in the room.
Really?
Mind you, only the men were in the room to adopt a new policy, and the policy, it says the right things, but it doesn't do what the Assembly does. When you have a complaint in the Assembly, you don't go to someone who reports to the Speaker. You go to an outside lawyer who has, he's paid by the Assembly, he or she, but his job doesn't depend on whether the Speaker likes him. So if you're going to go to someone appointed by the Secretary of the Senate, which is what the Senate created, that's controlled by the majority. That's controlled by Jeff Klein and John Flanagan.
Oh, geez.
That's not right. And the other thing is, if they don't, if in 30 days after they rule, you're not satisfied, you have no further recourse. So I don't think the policy, I think you can have strong policies. They didn't adopt a strong enough policy, and I think they should have an investigation. I don't know the facts. Have an investigation.
Again, when did they do this?
They just adopted the policy last week.
last week, and I haven't heard nothing about that. It's
Well,
interesting.
I'll email you something.
Please.
Yes,
do,
please.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, wow. Yeah.
Now I know you don't have a lot of time, but
Yes, thank you.
a lot of times we ask the person running about their political, background. Who is Shelley Meyers, the person, not the politician, the person?
Well, I'll just tell you a little bit about my background. So, I grew up in the 50s and 60s, living in Yonkers. My father was a Democrat who ran for office 4 times. Democrats never won then. That was the losing ball game. But he ran because he believed in sort of the principles of getting out there and saying stuff. So that's the world I grew up in. I am a progressive activist person who's had the great opportunity to do a lot of good things, including represent people. I have 3 wonderful children. 2 are married. I have 3 little grandchildren. 2 new ones that are, unfortunately, none of them live immediately close, and I'm in the middle of a campaign, so I can't see them all the time. But I'm married for a long time, 38 years, 38 years, 38 years, and I'm back in the house in Northeast Yonkers that I grew up in. So
Okay.
I consider myself a down-to-earth, approachable person, very honored to be able to serve people. I take it seriously. I think it's an honorable profession, and I think we can do better than the tone that we have now.
Catherine Brussels just said,
Ah.
"Oh shoot, hey Shelley," and put a whole bunch of hearts.
Oh, that's so sweet. She called me earlier today. You're absolutely right about her.
Yeah.
She's a gem. We got a future for her.
She's loyal.
And I also want to say about you, I guess I met you once at Independence Day, Independence Party,
Yes.
like 2014 or something. And then every time I've seen you, you're like, I know AJ.
Yeah,
somebody went to introduce
No,
me.
we
You
also
remember?
had Love Pan.
I love it. Right. So, but I'm saying I've seen you several
Yes,
times.
thank you.
And someone goes to introduce me. I know AJ.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
you
yeah.
remember? Yeah. So.
I do remember.
Yeah.
And I'm so very pleased to have the opportunity. I'm happy to come back
Anytime. Yes.
when,
Oh,
when the time is right,
Yes,
before we
please.
get to April 24th
That's
and
right.
the
That's right. Please
rubber
come
meets
back.
the road. I believe I'm going to win this, and I think
You
there's
are.
all this enthusiasm.
Yeah.
Congratulations,
And-
now.
Yes.
Before you
Yeah.
leave,
Yes.
anybody listening that wants to know more about you.
Yes.
Want to
maybe
volunteer?
Want to volunteer in your kid, get involved, donate, whatever.
Yes.
How do they do those things?
So the website will be up tomorrow.
Okay.
So it's not there yet. I just looked at it today. But they should email me at Shelley Mayer for Senate, SHELLEY MAYER, the number 4, Senate, SENATE @gmail.com.
Okay.
And we'll get right back to him. My campaign office is at 437 Ward Avenue in Mamaroneck, across from the Mamaroneck train station.
Okay.
My office as an assembly person is at 35 East Grassy Spring Road in Yonkers.
Okay.
Okay.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Well,
Thank
we,
you.
we thank you for coming
Thank
and
you
for
so much.
taking your time,
No.
especially on a Sunday evening. We
She's
appreciate
got
Su-
folks at
and
home
Super
waiting
Bowl
for
Sunday.
her.
I have
And
people.
Super Bowl.